The text message shattered my world like an offshore explosion. Our entire life savings come with a single kiss emoji from Tiffany, my wife of 18 years. As the cold metal of the oil rig vibrated beneath my trembling hands, I stared at the screenshot of our emptied account and felt something darker than rage building inside me, something that would eventually make her regret ever hearing the name Ryan Cooper. I grew up in the kind of small Texas town where everyone knew your business before you did. Odessa wasn't much to look at, flat, dusty, and dominated by pump jacks nodding like giant mechanical birds across the landscape. But it was home, and I was proud of what I'd built there. I met Tiffany at the Permian Basin offshore back in 5. She stood out like a diamond in a coal mine, wearing a red dress that caught every eye in the place. I was 34 then, already 10 years into the offshore life. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off the rhythm that defined my existence. "You look like a man who knows what he wants," she said, sidling up to me at the bar. I remember laughing. What I want is usually 1,000 miles away, out in the Gulf. She touched my arm, her fingers cool against my sunburned skin. "Maybe what you want just found you." We married 6 months later in a small ceremony at her parents' church. I still have the photo on my nightstand, or did, until recently. Tiffany in her white gown, me looking uncomfortable in a rented tux, both of us smiling like we'd won the lottery. For the first decade, things were good. I'd come home from my rotations to a spotless house and home-cooked meals. We'd talk about my time on the rig, her volunteer work at the community center, plans for trips we rarely took. The sex was good when I wasn't too exhausted from 14-hour shifts in punishing heat and deafening noise. "You're my rock, Ryan," she used to tell me, nestled against my chest at night. So steady, so dependable. I believed her. Believed in us. Worked harder, longer shifts, taking the most dangerous assignments for the hazard pay. Every dollar went toward our future, a future I imagined with rocking chairs on a porch somewhere with actual trees, not the scrubby mesquite dot of West Texas. The crack started small. A missed anniversary call the satellite phone was down, not my fault. Her birthday, I'd sent flowers, but they arrived a day late. "It's fine," she said, but her voice had that edge to it. I just sat here alone, that's all. I didn't see how the distance was changing her. Or maybe changing us both. The all life does that, hardens you, compartmentalizes your world. You become two different people, rig Ryan and home Ryan. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at family photos during night shifts, wondering if I even recognized the man in them anymore. When I hit my 40s, the job started taking more than it gave. My back ached constantly from wrestling with equipment twice my weight. My hearing faded from years of industrial roar. Sleep became a luxury between emergency drills and equipment failures. "Just 5 more years," I promised her on my 50th birthday. "Then we cash out, move somewhere nice." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. 5 years is a long time, Brian. I didn't notice when she stopped calling during my shifts. Didn't question the house repairs that never seemed to improve anything. Was too tired to wonder about the new clothes, the gym membership, the hair appointments. My crew chief, Marcus, tried to warn me. "Cooper, my ex-wife, did the same damn thing before she left. New clothes, new friends, new life. You better check your accounts, brother." I laughed it off. "Tiffany is just bored. 27 years in this business. Marcus, I know what I'm doing." 27 years in oil, but apparently clueless about what was happening in my own home. The signs were all there, the hushed phone calls, the perfume I didn't recognize, her sudden interest in investment terms she'd never cared about before. The last time I hugged her goodbye at the airport, something felt different. She held on a beat too long, like she was memorizing the moment. "I love you, Ryan," she whispered. "You know that, right?" I kissed her forehead. "Course I do. See you in 2 weeks." If I'd known that was the last honest moment between us, I might have held on tighter. Might have looked in her eyes long enough to see the life forming there. Instead, I boarded my helicopter, heading back to the rig, back to the life that was slowly costing me everything that mattered. I staggered backward, the phone nearly slipping from my calloused hands. Around me, the rig's mechanical symphony faded to white noise as my cousin Nathan's voice cackled over the satellite connection. "Ryan, I need you to sit down for this," Nathan said, his tone dead serious. I braced myself against the cold metal railing, the Gulf of Mexico churning 80 feet below. "What's happening, Nate?" My mouth went as it dried despite the humid air. "I've been looking into those renovations Tiffany's been doing. There aren't any, Ryan. No contractors, no permits, nothing." The first punch to my gut. "I pulled your financial records," Nathan continued. He'd been an accountant for 20 years, and I'd given him power of attorney during my long rotations. "She's been systematically draining your accounts for 14 months, wire transfers, cashier's checks, new credit lines, $214,000, Ryan, gone." The second punch dropped me to my knees on the grated metal floor. "There's more," Nathan said, his voice breaking. "She forged your signature on a home equity loan, changed your life insurance beneficiaries too, and Ryan, she's not alone." I squeezed my eyes shut, watching 2 decades of marriage flash behind my eyelids. The red dress at the oil show. The morning coffee she'd bring me before dawn departures. The letter she used to send to the rig before email became common. His name is Jason Miller, Nathan said. 25 years old, former personal trainer, has a history of targeting wealthy older women. I found receipts for 2 one-way tickets to Palm Springs, purchased last week. The control room door swung open behind me. Marcus stood there, concern etched across his withered face. I waved him off, turning away. They're clearing out the house, Ryan. Moving vans were there yesterday. Your grandfather's pocket watch, your father's service medals all boxed up. My hands began to shake, not from rage but from a bone-deep cold that seemed to spread from my chest outward. I accessed her email. Nathan continued, his voice dropping lower. Ryan, there were plans. If the money wasn't enough, they have what they called a plan B. They discussed collecting your insurance money after an accident. The third punch nearly knocked me unconscious. They were planning to kill me? The words tasted like battery acid. I can't be sure, but their messages. Ryan, they discuss how accidents happen on oil rigs all the time. Jason researched fatal incidents in the Gulf. They talked about how much easier everything would be with you gone. I leaned against the bulkhead, my reflection fractured in the control panel glass, a grey-haired stranger with hollow eyes staring back at me. The woman who kissed me goodbye 2 weeks ago was plotting my death, I whispered. Marcus approached cautiously, sliding a cup of black coffee into my trembling hands. Cooper, you okay, man? I covered the phone. No, I'm not. When I returned to the call, Nathan was still talking. Filed a domestic violence claim yesterday. Ryan says she fears for her life when you return. She's building a story that you've been abusive for years. 18 years. 18 years of overtime and hazard pay. 18 years of missed birthdays and holidays. 18 years of believing I was building something that mattered. Nathan, I need a favor, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Contact Sheriff Thornton, he knows me, then call Loyal at the bank we played high school football together, freeze everything. Already started, but Ryan, you need to come home, now. I glanced at the calendar on the wall. My rotation ends in 8 days. She and this Jason character will be gone by then, with everything you ever worked for. I looked up to find Marcus watching me, arms crossed. 20 years we'd worked together, saved each other's lives more than once in emergencies. Marcus, I said, covering the phone again. Remember when you warned me about checking my accounts? He nodded slowly. I should have listened. I turned back to the phone. Nathan, get me on the first helicopter off this rig. Tell no one I'm coming. And Nathan? Yeah. Thank you for being the one person in my life who wasn't blinded by her. As I packed my duffel bag in the cramped quarters I called home half my life, I found myself staring at the worn photograph of Tiffany on my nightstand. Her smile, once my anchor to the world beyond endless ocean, now looked like something else entirely, calculated, patient, and cold. I slipped the photo face down into the trash and zipped my bag. The man who had flown out to this rig 2 weeks ago was dead. Whatever was flying back to shore was something else, something tempered in betrayal and forged in the sudden knowledge that the life I thought I had was nothing but a cruel illusion. For the first time in 27 years, I was leaving a job unfinished. But I had more important work waiting for me on shore, salvaging whatever remained of the life that Tiffany hadn't yet destroyed. The helicopter blades pounded like my heartbeat as we approached the shoreline. Below, the grey-blue waters gave way to the familiar coastline of a place I no longer recognized as home. Marcus had pulled strings to get me on that chopper before dawn, breaking company protocol without hesitation. You've got family waiting? The pilot asked over the headset. I nodded silently, my throat too tight for words. Family was waiting, all right, family that had betrayed me in ways I couldn't have imagined in my darkest nightmares. When we touched down, Nathan was waiting in his battered Ford pickup, engine running. His face was grim as I threw my duffel in the back. They're still at the house, he said, pulling onto the highway. Moving companies scheduled for noon. I stared at the passing landscape, every familiar landmark now twisted into something unrecognizable. You talked to Sheriff Thornton. He's meeting us at Will's place, your neighbor across the street. Memories flooded back Will and his wife bringing over casseroles during Tiffany's cancer scare 5 years ago. The cancer that mysteriously disappeared without treatment. The first of many lies I'd swallowed whole. Will's been documenting everything, Nathan continued. Got photos of Jason coming and going for months. Security cameras caught them loading your father's medals into his Audi yesterday. My hands clenched into fists as I imagined the stranger pulling through my father's Purple Heart, the Bronze Star he'd earned in Vietnam. I closed my eyes, letting the rage wash through me like crude oil, hot, viscous, and toxic. Nathan pulled into Will's driveway, cutting the engine. You ready for this? I glanced across the street at the colonial-style home I'd paid for with 27 years of sweat and sacrifice. The curtains were drawn. Tiffany always kept them open in the mornings. No, I said honestly. But I'm doing it anyway. Inside Will's house, Sheriff Thornton looked up from a spread of documents on the dining table. His weathered face softened when he saw me. "Ryan," he said, rising to clasp my shoulder. "I'm sorry as hell about all this." I nodded, unable to speak as I looked at the evidence laid out before me: bank statements, forged signatures, screenshots of text messages between Tiffany and Jason discussing Plan B if the money wasn't enough. Asterisk, if the rig accident doesn't happen naturally, we'll have to make other arrangements. Asterisk, the words burned into my retinas. "We've got enough here," Thornton said, tapping the papers. Judge Emerson signed the emergency injunction an hour ago, all accounts frozen, restraining order ready. "They're outside," was wife called from the front window. I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough. Across the street, a sleek black Audi sat in my driveway beside Tiffany's Mercedes. The front door opened, and there she was, my wife of 18 years, laughing as she carried a box to the car. Behind her followed a young man with gym-sculpted shoulders and a confident stride. Jason. I watched as they loaded my life into their vehicles. Watched as Tiffany checked her watch impatiently. Watched as Jason leaned in to kiss her in my driveway. Squad cars pulling up now, while murmured beside me. The patrol car rolled to a stop in front of my house. 2 deputies stepped out, paperwork in hand. I watched Tiffany's face transform from irritation to confusion as they approached. "Now or never," Nathan said softly. I stepped outside onto his porch, standing in full view across the street. Even from that distance, I saw the moment Tiffany registered my presence, her body going rigid, her hand flying to her throat in that theatrical gesture I once found endearing. "You weren't supposed to be back for a week," she called, her voice carrying across the quiet street. I said nothing, just stood there as the deputies handed her the court orders. I watched her face crumple as she scanned the documents, watched Jason backing away as the reality of the situation dawned. "You can't do this," she screamed, the papers trembling in her hands. "These are lies, he's abusive." But her performance fell flat as well, and 3 other neighbors emerged from their homes, Sheriff Thornton beside me now on the porch. "Pretty hard to be abusive from 300 miles offshore, ma'am," the sheriff called back. In that moment, standing on my neighbor's porch watching my wife's carefully constructed life collapse like a house of cards, I felt no triumph. Only an emptiness that echoed through my bones like the hollow chambers of the oil rig I'd called home half my life. As the deputies began cataloguing items they were removing from the vehicles, I caught Tiffany's eyes one last time across the divide. In them, I saw not the woman I'd loved for 2 decades, but a stranger who had plotted my death while sleeping beside me night after night. Was any of it real? I asked, my voice carrying in the morning stillness. Her answer came not in words, but in a calculated coldness that settled over her features, the mask finally dropping away after 18 years of performance. And in that moment, I knew I had my answer. I stood in Will's living room that afternoon, watching through the window as the deputies finished their work. The Audi and Mercedes sat empty now, their cargo catalogued and secured as evidence. Tiffany had retreated inside my house after her performance fell flat, while Jason paced the driveway making frantic phone calls. "Want some coffee?" Will asked, placing a steaming mug on the side table. I nodded absently, my eyes still fixed on the scene across the street. That's when I noticed the manila folder Sheriff Thornton was sliding across the table toward me, his expression unreadable. "There's something else you need to see, Ryan." The folder contained printouts of emails, dozens of them between Tiffany and someone named Melissa Hargrove. I frowned, scanning the first few exchanges. "Who's Melissa?" I asked, though something cold and heavy settled in my gut. Nathan cleared his throat. "Jason's ex-girlfriend. She reached out to me after seeing your name in some paperwork Jason left behind at her place." As I read deeper into the emails, my blood turned to ice water in my veins. These weren't just casual exchanges, they were detailed discussions about insurance policies, offshore oil rig safety protocols, and specific references to my work schedule. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, my fingers trembling against the paper. One email from 3 months ago hit me like a physical blow. Asterisk J says the brake lines are the easiest, clean, quick, looks like an accident, but we need to be sure he has a policy updated first. No reason to do it if we're not covered as beneficiaries. I've already practiced his signature enough times the bank doesn't even question it anymore. Asterisk. Sheriff Thornton pointed to a photo clip to the back of the file. Melissa's ex-husband died in a single vehicle accident last year. Brake lines mysteriously failed on a mountain road. Case was ruled accidental death. The insurance paid out double for accidental death, Nathan added quietly. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the hardwood. My legs gave out as I collapsed into Will's armchair, memories flooding my consciousness. Tiffany's insistence that I increase my life insurance last year, her sudden interest in my work schedule, the mysterious calls in the middle of the night. "There's more," Thornton said, sliding another document across the table. "Your house was listed for sale 3 weeks ago, 30% below market value for a quick sale." I stared at the listing agreement, my signature forged at the bottom in handwriting that looked disturbingly like my own. "The realtor said they needed to close before you returned from your next rotation," Will said. "They were planning to be gone by the end of the month." A deputy burst through the front door, his face flushed. "Sheriff, you need to see this." We followed him outside, where Jason stood handcuffed beside a patrol car. The trunk of the Audi was open, revealing a duffel bag I'd never seen before. Found it hidden under the spare tire well, the deputy explained. Inside the bag, a handgun with the serial number filed off, 3 different sets of license plates, over $20,000 in cash, and a notebook containing details about oil rig accidents from the past decade. Through the window of my house, I caught Tiffany watching us, her face strained of color as she registered what we discovered. If I'd made it onto that rig for my next rotation. I couldn't finish the sentence. Sheriff Thornton's hand squeezed my shoulder. But you didn't. You're here, and they're finished. As the realization sank in that my wife of 18 years had been methodically planning my death, I felt something shift inside me, not just anger or betrayal, but a cold, clear understanding. The woman across the street wasn't just stealing my money, she was patiently waiting for the perfect moment to end my life. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my mountain cabin, watching the Montana sunset paint the sky in hues I'd never appreciated before. The peaceful sound of wind through the pines replaced the constant mechanical drone I'd lived with for decades on those offshore platforms. "Never thought I'd see you become a mountain man," Nathan said, handing me a beer as he joined me on the porch. I smiled, feeling the weight that had lifted from my shoulders. Neither did I. Funny how life's worst moments can lead you exactly where you need to be. The 40 acres surrounding my cabin had been my secret investment for years, purchased through Winter Holdings, a company I'd established after watching my father lose everything in his divorce. A contingency plan I never thought I'd need to use. The trial had been mercifully brief. With a mountain of evidence against them, both Tiffany and Jason took plea deals rather than face a jury. Jason flipped on Tiffany immediately, confirming they'd been plotting my accident for months. The prosecutor's theory was simple: if the money grab failed, they'd move to plan B, my death on the oil rig. "Heard from Will yesterday," Nathan said, settling into an Adirondack chair. "Tiffany's living with her sister in Tulsa now, working retail at the mall." I nodded, feeling nothing but a distant hollowness where 18 years of marriage once lived. The 5-year probation and restitution payments she'd been sentenced to were almost meaningless. She'd never be able to repay what she'd stolen, let alone what she destroyed. "And Jason?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Moved on to his next target, some divorce doctor in Arizona." Nathan shook his head. "Sheriff Thornton says it's only a matter of time before he slips up again." I thought back to that afternoon in Will's living room, the moment my entire understanding of my life shattered. The evidence of Tiffany's betrayal had been devastating, but discovering she'd been plotting my death had fundamentally changed me. Not just how I saw her, but how I saw everything. "You know what keeps me up sometimes?" I said, watching an eagle circle lazily above the tree line. Not the betrayal or the theft, it's wondering how long she'd been living a double life. Were there ever real moments between us, or was it all just an act? Nathan didn't offer empty platitudes, and I appreciated that. Inside my cabin, dinner awaited a pot of venison stew I'd made from scratch. Another new skill in my post-Tiffany life. The cabin walls were decorated with photographs of my parents, my nieces and nephews, fishing trips with friends, the parts of my life I'd neglected while working endless rotations to build a future that was never going to happen. "Remember that trip to Galveston?" I asked, the memory surfacing unexpectedly. 4th of July weekend, maybe 12 years ago. Nathan nodded. Tiffany was on her phone the whole time, said it was work. I took a long pull from my beer. I wonder now who she was really talking to, how many others there were before Jason. "Does it matter anymore?" Nathan asked quietly. After a moment, I shook my head. "No, I guess it doesn't." 3 months after the arrest, I'd taken early retirement after 27 years in oil. Between my pension, investments, and the natural gas royalties from a small property my grandfather had left me, I had more than enough to live comfortably. The money Tiffany hadn't managed to steal was safely locked away from her reach forever. As darkness settled over the mountains, I felt that sense of peace that still surprised me whenever it appeared. There had been no grand revenge, no satisfaction in watching Tiffany's life unravel. Just quiet relief that I'd survived her plans for me, both financial and fatal. "I keep thinking about what could have happened," I admitted. If Will hadn't noticed the for sale sign going up when I was supposed to be offshore, if Alyssa hadn't found those papers and reached out. "But they did," Nathan said simply. "And here you are." Here I was indeed alive, rebuilding, and finally living on my own terms. The cold betrayal had changed me, but not in the ways Tiffany might have expected. I'd become more deliberate with my time, more present with the people who mattered. The fortress I'd built wasn't just this cabin in the mountains, but the understanding that life's worst storms could be weathered with the right preparation and the right people beside you. I raised my beer in a silent toast to the setting sun, grateful for second chances I never knew I'd need. The coldest betrayals don't come from enemies, but from those who have slept beside you for years, planning your destruction while smiling to your face. Looking back now, I realized Tiffany's betrayal taught me something profound about life and trust. I didn't waste my soul on revenge that would have given her power over me long after she was gone. Instead, I chose to rebuild. My hidden fortress wasn't just this cabin or my secret holdings, it was the resilience I never knew I had until I needed it most. Some nights, sitting here under Montana's stars, I feel an overwhelming gratitude washing over me. Not for escaping her plans, but for discovering what matters. The quiet dignity of honest work. The loyalty of true friends. The peace that comes from living authentically. You didn't break me, I whisper sometimes to the mountain air. You freed me. And in those moments, with the wind in the pines and the vast sky above, I know with bone-deep certainty that I've found something Tiffany and Jason never will, a life that's genuinely mine.